If we will have time, we will take questions at the end. But now we will continue. Our next speaker is Mr. Michael Codner. Michael is a senior research fellow in the military sciences at the Royal United Services Institute, known as RUSI, in London, United Kingdom. Mike's research includes defense policy, strategic theory, the future security environment, missile defense, military ethics, and multinational military interoperability, including the Franco-British relationship. He lectures at British and overseas universities and military staff colleges. As a Royal Navy Seaman Commander, he was a lecturer at the U.S. Naval War College and a defense fellow at King's College in London. Mike studied philosophy and psychology at Bransnow's College, Oxford, in Oxford University. Mike's brief is going to be on the future of European missile defense. Mike, please.
I think I don't really need it. No. Good afternoon. I'm very honoured indeed to have been invited to speak today at this important conference, and it's good to meet so many friends and colleagues again. I know I don't have a lot of time to speak, so I'd like to give a short overview of a piece of research that I've been doing in my institute with my colleague Avnish Patel, who couldn't be with us today. And if I could just say that RUSI, my organisation, is a completely independent think tank, despite its royal in its name, and we're not funded by the British government. The aim of this project is to examine the European contribution to missile defence. Importantly, our method was to get opinions directly from European governments and analysts in the particular countries through interviews. I introduced the project in Tel Aviv in March last year and had planned to finish it last autumn, but things have been changing so fast that it would have been out of date had it been published then. In particular, there's been the changing relationship with Iran and most recently Russia, Ukraine, and the occupation of the Crimea. Another issue is the United Kingdom's approach to missile defence and whether there will be actually any serious developments in British capabilities. This matter was not addressed in the 2010 Strategic Defence and Security Review, but the UK Ministry of Defence has been carrying out a study in preparation for the 2015 Defence Review. We're not privy to the outcome of the study, but I have heard some gossip, and I'll come back to that. This audience here, in this very much more potentially vulnerable environment, may feel that this has very little to do with the actual threats now and in the future, but the focus of our study has been very much on national policies and perceptions rather than technical capabilities, on which I'm not an expert, though I appreciate that in missile defence the issues are intimately related and inseparable. Our initial focus was on the nations of Eastern Europe, beginning with Turkey, Romania and Poland. We did interviews in the Baltic republics and indeed in Ukraine, and just in passing, we didn't interview the government in Ukraine. We spoke to a think tank where there was a previous defense minister, and his push was very much on Ukraine being useful from an industrial point of view in European Ministry of Defense, in missile defense. This was a while ago, I have to say. It was last autumn. We were keen to get a Nordic view from Sweden and Finland and Norway and Denmark. With the exception of Denmark and the radar at Thule, these countries aren't contributors, but we wanted to explore longer-term issues, in particular Arctic access, and whether this would be a concern. We followed up with interviews in NATO and the Netherlands, and through our associate fellows in France, Italy and Spain. I'm just pulling together the final report, draft report, to present at the RUSI Missile Defence Conference the week after next, 18th and 19th of March in London, and do come if you're not already planning to do so. So, a quick summary of our conclusions. And the first point which is not new to anyone, is that missile defense is a multinational collaborative effort, and no nation, not even the United States, can do it alone. If ever there was a test case for NATO smart defense, it is BMD. Secondly, there is a tendency, particularly in the less engaged nations, such as the United Kingdom, to see missile defense very much just in the nuclear context, on the one hand, and about ballistic missiles on the other. Whereas here in Israel, you are very much more aware of the spectrum of short, medium, and range nuclear and conventional threats. And this full range of threats is a real challenge to those European powers which have continued aspirations to pursue expeditionary strategies, in particular France and the United Kingdom. The separation of national and is of course less relevant to countries whose territory is directly threatened, such as Israel or Turkey. Does missile defense compromise nuclear deterrence? You would have thought that this issue would have gone away and that the two are complementary, but there is still this residual view in some less threatened governments, and an argument in UK government not to commit funding directly to Ministry of Defence and to NATO in this respect is because the United Kingdom spends a considerable sum on its nuclear deterrent, and this is the British contribution to the deterrence and defence mix. I don't mean to harp on about the UK, but some of these questions are representative of the uncertainties, understandings, and hard choices to be made. Without being simplistic, one can categorize countries by a number of factors. There are those that genuinely feel threatened by missile attack, and from the Middle East in particular. Turkey is in this category, and so to some extent is Italy. Turkey, of course, provides territory in Malatya for the United States radar. The Turkish missile defense was very clear in my interviews that this contribution is because Turkey is a responsible member of NATO, and this is a contribution to the protection of NATO generally. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was sceptical about progress in developing Turkey's own indigenous capability. Of course, Turkey has protection from a serious threat from the US, German, and Dutch Patriot batteries. Those that continue to feel threatened by Russia's military presence and unpredictability generally are quite a few. Of the actual and potential contributors, Romania and Poland are in this category. In essence, Romania contributes territory for land-based Aegis as an appropriate contribution to its strategic bargain with the United States for general defense and not to protect specifically against missile attack. Poland had a similar position with regard to the third site, but Poland feels the need to have defense against Russian missiles and the need for indigenous capability. The Baltic republics, Finland and Sweden, continue to see Russia as a threat. Indeed, the Crimea issue has recently spawned a review in Sweden of its defense policy. This happened also during the Georgia crisis, when I was actually in Stockholm for a maritime conference, when the whole pivot of the conference shifted from expeditionary back to the Baltic. Then there are the countries who see the air and missile defense of Europe and take it seriously, such as Germany and Netherlands in particular. There is a historic association with air defense of the Central Front during the Cold War and responsibility, in the case of Germany, for the protection of Ramstein, in particular as a key missile defense hub. With the collapse of the MEADS program, Germany has to find a successor or upgrade for Patriots. And Bernd's obviously much better equipped to talk about that. Spain provides Rota, the sea base for the United States Aegis cruisers with the standard SM-3 missile, which are a fundamentally important contributor to the European phased adaptive approach. And this could be seen as Spain's view of its appropriate contribution to its own strategic bargain with the United States. Then there are the expeditionary nations, France and the United Kingdom, and the question of theatre missile defence. France is developing the Aster seaborne system, and clearly theatre missile defence is one driving factor. The UK remains ambivalent. One could say that there is the appropriate contribution of Fylingdales for the radar, for the strategic bargain with the United States. The issue of missile defense in theatre is one that the United Kingdom has avoided, even though operational autonomy and a balanced force is an important element of its expeditionary strategy. Officials are certainly aware of the longer-term threat to British territory of long-range ballistic missiles. The Type 45 destroyer is an obvious platform that could be adapted to contribute to theatre and national missile defence, but there is concern that this would compromise its air defence capability, and there aren't very many of them, and they're very expensive. To my mind, a major concern for Europe as a whole is missile defence in the longer term, and Bernd's already addressed this. I would not expect the United States to renege on its commitments to European defence, but there is the issue of priorities in Asia and the problem for all major and medium powers of rising defence costs. It's not that capability levels will be reduced through unaffordability, but there will be not enough numbers of platforms to disperse, in the case of the United States, around the globe. The test scenario would be a Middle East-North Africa crisis, when the United States was heavily engaged in East Asia and Aegis cruisers or their replacements had to be deployed there. Because so many European nations have a rather tentative commitment to missile defence, and much of it has to do with its strategic bargain with the United States for other defence reasons, can they come up to the mark? Replacement of Aegis in that case, albeit temporarily in theatre, would require France and Italy to develop their Aster capability, the United Kingdom to contribute its Type 45s, and Germany and Netherlands their air defence frigates. And what will the strategic direction of the United Kingdom be? To participate more actively in defence in the European strategic context and lead alongside France in this respect, or to focus on supplementing the United States more globally? I think the United States would prefer the first option. And so, as Bernd has already suggested, the issue is Russia on side in the longer term, among other things. This may all sound rather simplistic, and I haven't had much time, but I hope that our paper will provide the detail and authority that we are hoping for. Thank you.